Hey there, happy February, and welcome to the Earopener, the radio broadcast and podcast bringing you behind the scenes on stories reported by Ryerson University's independent student newspaper, the Eye-Opener. Ryerson is a university of ideas, an academic institution where creativity moves freely about the campus. That is, at least, the image Ryerson painstakingly constructs for itself, helping to produce the latest startups and tech innovations with a lineup of creative industry programs like media production, fashion, journalism, and its own theater school. Ryerson sets itself apart from other universities. Ryerson isn't a strict, stodgy, and stuffy old-school university like U of T. Ryerson is a creative university. Some Ryerson students, however, may tell you otherwise. Plagued by never-ending piles of work and strict curriculums, Ryerson students in artistic programs are having their creativity choked out. Valerie Dietrich spoke with students feeling creatively stifled by their programs and wrote a piece on the matter in this week's edition of the Eye-Opener. She's here now to discuss the issue and the broader implications of a lack of creativity at Ryerson University. Welcome, Valerie.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So tell me about your experiences and how that prompted this story into creative death in creative programs.
Well, I mostly went into journalism because I love writing. And I have been writing since I was a little girl. So when I was trying to apply for university, because, being in creative writing isn't like the most palpable career choice, I decided to go with journalism. And I can honestly say, since stepping on Ryerson campus, learning how to write journalistically, I have not been able to write a creative piece since then, and it's kind of killing me inside.
But why is that?
Well, because, in journalism, they teach you to write very concisely and very simple. Like, people between the ages of 8 and 80 have to be able to read this hard piece and understand it. What's really jarring is that they'll tell you, it's your 8-word sentence, make it 4. And they'll cut your adjectives out, cut flowery language out. So every time I try to sit down and write something creatively, I'm so stuck in the way that I write. I have such an issue trying to, format a good idea that I'm happy with.
Okay, well, I have to ask, why not just switch into a creative writing program, go to another university?
You know what? I realized that I really do actually like journalism. I really enjoy it, and I can see myself doing it. It's just the whole fact it's not a great career choice financially wise. I think I'm just worried about my own financial stability, and a lot of it relies on how creative are you. What happens if I try to make a career out of this and I don't make money for 2 years because I can't write anything?
Well, I understand how that can come into play in journalism. It's mildly academic, there are strict things you have to learn and procedures, and it's founded on the idea of objectivity and unbiased, which is inherently impersonal.
Yeah.
But how does this type of rigorous curriculums and creative death happen in something inherently more expressive like dance or acting?
Someone in dance said that because she's doing it all day and it's such rigorous training and there's just so much she has to do, she feels overworked and she feels tired because of it. And in dance, there's a lot of expectations. You're very constrained to what you have to do because you're training to be on Broadway. You're training to be a professional dancer. She has to really stick to her curricular guidelines and doesn't give her a lot of time or energy to go in the studio and try other things.
Programs like this, and even in journalism, does the situation improve? Kind of like a literature or poli-sci program, the first year is general lectures where you just sit and passively take in information, but later into the program you have more discussionary seminars and things like that. Does that happen in more creative-minded programs?
When I talked to Savannah Soriel, she's second year fashion. She said that her first year they're really constrained and it's very much the basics and very much of this is how you sew, this is how you design something. And then she said as the years go on, she has a bit more creative freedom in taking what she wants to take. So it does happen. It's just I find people I was talking to, especially I talked to a guy named Charlie Joy. He's in second year RTA. Said kind of the same thing. The first 2 years are very technique heavy. They just want to teach you how to do something before you can go and do your own thing.
In what ways is this really just being part of university, like being in a university program? You mentioned being overworked and not having enough time. I feel like it's a reality for all students, regardless of whether they're in their creative programs. Is that just something that students need to deal with?
I think it is something you just have to deal with and something you have to work around. But I feel like in creative programs, it could be a bit more jarring. It could be a little bit harder to deal with because you're pursuing something that you love and pursuing something that you want to make a career out of. And then you get to a point where you feel really overworked from it. And you're like, I'm so tired of doing what I love. And it's a little uncomfortable, I would say.
But what is the alternative then? Because you are going to school to learn something and you're doing it day in, day out. And anytime you're spending 40 to 60 hours a week doing anything, what do other universities or colleges do to inject a sense of creative freshness?
I think when I talked to Charlie Joy, he said that he doesn't feel that way in his program. He feels a lot of creative freedom. He's also a musician, so he tries to make time to do what he wants to do, applying the skills from what he learned in class. And he said to me, I'm still creative, but I'm creative with direction.
And is that a bad thing?
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a really good thing, actually, because a lot of the times when you're creating something, you don't really know what you're doing, especially if you're just starting out in something. Like if I was to become a musician tomorrow, I wouldn't know what I was doing.
Of the students you spoke to, and I'm sure others who feel the same way, and this seems to be across different programs, different faculties, are students actively complaining, and is the university listening?
Maybe not actively complaining. Maybe not complaining to professors, just kind of within their friend circle. They'll ask their professors, hey, I want to take this in a different direction. And you have to get approval from them, obviously, because they're your professors. And they'll probably say yes. And she said it feels like they're learning. So I would say it's slowly coming to a head. I would say students maybe are getting discouraged and now starting to speak out. I think the university still has a long way to go. And I know you can't completely allow creative freedom. That's like way too difficult to do. But I would say that they're probably getting better.
So if students, if they dare do a go outside these expected norms and think outside the box for a project or an assignment, is there more of a likelihood that they'll get lower marks? Will they be seen less as academics, and will they be reprimanded for essentially going outside what they're expected to do?
I feel like if you're talking about fashion or RTA, I feel like you have a little bit more leeway there. But in a sense, for journalism, there's a difference between what constitutes journalism and what doesn't constitute journalism. Like, I can't submit a creative piece to my professor in college journalism. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. I would say it depends on the program.
Outside of just simple frustration and exhaustion, what does being creatively limited do to a student's mental health? How much of that is simply being a student and being overworked?
I think a lot of people use their creative skills as an outlet to what they're feeling. Like, if I'm feeling whatever, I write about it. Some people make music, some people dance. I think being overworked in that, it can kind of impact your mental health because you feel, overly tired because you're overworked from school. You kind of have to find a different outlet, which could be kind of difficult for a student, I would say. Savannah, who's in second year fashion, mentioned that she uses drawing as an outlet and she loves illustration, but she does it for 8 hours a day and she's not going to go home and do it again. So she said finding a different outlet like dance or something else would help her a lot more.
And is that something she's doing? Like, what is stopping these students from finding another creative outlet?
It's tiredness. It's tiredness. People are tired, which something that just kind of comes to university and it sucks, but it's just something that comes with it. Charlie in second year RTA mentioned that he only works for 3 days a week, but they're 12-hour shifts. And he's very tired by the time he gets home. And he doesn't want to sit there and try to write a song. He wants to sleep because he has class the next morning.
Like, as you already kind of alluded to, creativity is difficult, if not impossible, to measure and really control. So I kind of do understand the university's approach into fairly evaluate students. They're only going off of core skills, things that can be objectively graded. But what would another approach be?
I think definitely you'd have to have a very large amount of discretion when you're making curriculums. It's definitely hard. It's definitely hard. I think giving maybe like a bare bones kind of guidelines, being like, this is what I want you to hit. Make sure you have this, this, and this. But you can do it any way you want. So you're still doing the project, you're still doing what you have to do. You're just not given such tight guidelines. You're given guidelines because, like I said, like you can't control creativity. So if you try to give it direction, it's a little easier to hone.
Okay, and you spoke to some undergraduate directors. What are they saying? Do they recognize these inherent issues within more creative-minded programs?
Well, I talked to Gavin Adamson. He's undergraduate program director, and he also makes the journalism curriculum. And honestly, I kind of knew what he was going to say when I went in, that you can't really allow a person in journalism to just go wherever they want. Because like I said, like there's a difference between what constitutes journalism and what doesn't constitute journalism. But he did say something really interesting. He said that, you should think of your journalistic work as creative work. It's just nonfiction. You're not making stuff up. But you're using the skills that you were taught, the way you write things, the way you format things. It's very creative and not everyone can do it. And it's a very important skill to have, which kind of really stuck with me. I think I just need to learn what creativity is again. I kind of lost my definition of it. I was so focused on just trying to do well in first year, which is important, and I was proud of myself for doing well in first year, but I kind of lost my own creative spark, and it's not anyone else's fault but my own.
And that is actually all the time we have. Thanks for joining me, Valerie. And to read more about what students are saying about Ryerson's lack of academic creativity, read Valerie's feature in this week's Eye Opener or at eyeopener.com. Thank you, Valerie.